So this is the ZTE Axon 30. Not the Ultra, not the Pro, just the regular 30. And whilst this is the more budget-friendly of the three phones, it's also the only one with an under-display camera. And this is actually ZTE's second iteration of this technology. And after using this phone for the past few weeks, I do want to unpack my thoughts on this updated under-display tech, but I also just want to comment on the experience of using this phone as a regular phone. And so with that being said, let's jump in. Now, in terms of design, aside from the under-display camera, which we'll get to a little later on, the phone has a fairly budget feeling to it. On the front, we have these somewhat modest but inconsistently sized bezels that are kind of the norm when it comes to this price tag. And then on the back is this fairly cheap feeling glossy plastic. It really doesn't feel amazing to hold in the hand, particularly when you compare it to the much more premium feeling Axon 30 Ultra. And whilst I totally understand the decision to use plastic, I think going for a matte finish would have been a much better way to go. But then we have the display, and whilst it's not quite as bright or as fluid as the one found on the Axon 30 Ultra, the one on this phone is still very impressive. 120Hz is always going to feel pretty great, but it's the way ZTE optimizes this display with all of their animations and so forth that really helps it to feel buttery smooth. And whilst we're talking about the software, I've got to say MyOS, which is the software skin that ships with this phone, is actually a pretty great version of Android. Aside from all of those beautiful animations that I mentioned and the fairly clean layout of the quick settings and so forth, what makes this software so great, in my opinion, is that you can actually use third-party launchers and gestures at the same time with very little impact to fluidity. That said, I do feel like this phone has occasional issues with RAM management. There's often times when you try and load an application from the recents page that has been killed in the background, it will for some reason take a good 5 seconds to open it. It almost feels as though the entire phone is frozen when this happens, but then eventually it will enter the app and reload the entire thing. It's not a huge issue, but it would be nice if ZTE could fix this. Another occasional issue I've experienced from time to time, perhaps every few days, is that the phone will just stop being able to send text messages and it will only restore functionality after a reboot. Actually, it doesn't stop sending messages, it just thinks it can't, and it will continuously retry the process without success. And what that means is that on the other end of the line, the person has received 30 of the same messages over and over. This actually happened to my wife on a couple of occasions, so now anytime a message takes longer than normal to send, I just quickly reboot the phone to avoid the other person getting a stack of duplicate messages. ZTE, if you're watching this, you gotta fix this one ASAP. Touching on the cameras real quick, and given that this is the budget phone in the Axon 30 lineup, unsurprisingly, this phone has the least impressive camera specs. It's got the usual 4-camera array we see on most budget phones these days, a wide, an ultra wide, and then the all but useless depth and macro sensors. But I will say the main sensor on this phone actually captures some pretty decent images. I quite like the way ZTE processes its photos, and in fact, I reckon they're one of the best when it comes to how they process portrait images. And whilst it's nice that we have the option of going to that ultra wide lens if need be, the quality really is quite subpar in comparison to the main sensor. Now, in terms of video, hot take here, but I honestly think ZTE is one of the best Android manufacturers when it comes to video processing. Seriously, in my experience, the videos that ZTE phones capture are up there with the Samsung flagships of the world, and I honestly feel like they even look a bit like the videos captured on iPhones. I know that's a pretty hot take, so take it for what it is, but put simply, I really like the videos that this phone captures. Alright, let's see what else. Battery life is pretty solid, definitely a full day plus performer, and the fingerprint sensor is blazingly fast, which has been really nice. Sadly, the haptics are awful, just like they were with the more expensive Ultra variant, and the speakers are also not great. As expected, we also don't have wireless charging or an IP rating, but neither did the Ultra or Pro versions of this phone, so no surprises there. And so then we come to that under-display camera. And I have to say, after hearing about all of the pitfalls with the first version of this technology on the Axon 20, I've been somewhat pleasantly surprised with version 2.0 on this phone. Now, is it perfect? No. You can still see that change in display quality in a lot of scenarios, but does it stick out like a sore thumb? Absolutely not. And in terms of display interruption compared to a hole punch, I actually think I prefer this under-display technology. The big downside though is still the quality of the selfie images. The phone has to do quite a lot of processing to bring back clarity and contrast to the selfie images that you take, and even in the slightest of tricky scenarios, images quickly turn to mush. That said, I do think the quality is passable for video chats though. I've had a number of video calls with family members since I've been using this phone, and after all that compression that most video chat apps put on their videos anyway, it's pretty hard to notice. I mean, it certainly doesn't look crisp or good, but it's not distractingly bad. And so the ultimate question is, should you get this phone? And I honestly don't really have a conclusive answer to that question. I think it probably most depends on how much this phone costs where you live in the world. At the time of making this video, here in Australia, the Axon 30 costs a little more than the OnePlus 8T and a little less than the OnePlus 9. And for my money, it's a no-brainer. Go with either of those phones instead of this one. But if you live somewhere in the world where this phone is quite a bit cheaper than those OnePlus phones and it's instead competing with the likes of Samsung's Galaxy A series, for example, then this phone could seriously be worth considering. But I probably wouldn't get it regardless if you're someone who takes lots of selfie images and videos. Either way, what I've probably learnt most from using this phone is that under-display technology is here to stay, and as long as it keeps improving, it's most certainly the future for all phones. Let me know your thoughts on this technology down in the comments below, but aside from that, thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.